So recently there's this video going viral all over the social media platforms, basically talking about RON95 fuels versus RON97 fuel. Now, in this video, it actually says that if you use a high RON fuel on a small capacity engine like say a Proto or Axia, that may lead the engine to work doubly hard and eventually leading up to breaking the engine. Now this is obviously not true. Now we usually don't react to such viral videos, but in this case it affects our industry, the automotive industry, and based on the comments, a lot of people are actually falling for this bunch of misinformation. So now here's the real story. No, we're not going to go into full research mode and talk about how fuel is made and what RON actually means. So we're just going to talk about the simple facts and just enough for you to know which fuels to use for your own cars. So yes, talking about RON numbers, the lower the number, the easier it is to combust. And conversely, the higher RON number, it means that it's harder to combust. It needs higher pressures and higher temperatures for it to pre-combust. But when we're talking about gasoline engines, we're talking about petrol engines, these engines use spark ignition. We don't use compression ignition like in diesel engines. So the part that ignites the fuel and the air mixture is the spark plug and not the fuel itself. Only in extreme cases will the fuel pre-ignite and pre-combust, and that may lead to knocking. So even if knocking does occur, all modern engines have this thing called the knock sensor, and if it detects that the engine is knocking, it will then send messages to the engine's ECU, which will adjust the spark timing to avoid knocking. They can either advance or even retard the spark timing. By doing this, the car's overall performance may be adjusted slightly, very likely to go down a little bit, but in the end, reliability will stay intact because it's designed to protect itself. But what is more important when it comes to RON numbers and knocking is not the engine displacements. I mean, it doesn't matter how small or how big the engine is. What's more important is the compression ratio. And there's also no correlations between the engine size and compression ratios. There are very small engines with high compression ratios, and conversely, there are very big engines with small compression ratios. Talking about the extreme end, there is the Mazda 2 that runs a 1.5 liter naturally aspirated engine, which is very small, but it also has a very high compression ratio, 14:1. But at the same time, that car runs perfectly smooth on RON95 because it's designed to do so. Now that engine, because of its high compression ratio, may be able to benefit from using higher RON fuels, as we've shown in our recent test with RON95 versus RON100. But like I said, that car is designed for RON95, and if you look at the user manuals, it will say that you use RON95 or higher. What's important here is or higher. If you go higher, it's fine, you just can't go lower. And if you use the same logic on Toyotas and Hondas, most of their user manuals will say use RON92 or higher. If you use that logic that you have to use the exact number that's in your manual, I don't know where you're going to find RON92 if you believe that RON95 will actually damage the engine. And for myself, I've been using a Peugeot 208 GTI 1.6 liter engine, turbocharged, but whatever, it's still 1.6, right? I've been running it on 97 or on 100 for 5 years now, and it still hasn't exploded yet. In any case, we live in a world where most car brands have adopted engine downsizing, so engine displacement hardly matters anymore. If you look at Hondas, they now have a 1.5 liter turbocharged engine that makes more power and torque compared to Toyota's naturally aspirated 2.5 liter engines. So in the end, the performance is what matters, not the engine displacement anymore. To sum it all up, it really doesn't matter what fuel you use, and no fuel is going to damage your engines. There are very few engines today that require very high RON requirements, RON97, RON98 and whatnot. If you run one of those engines, then yes, you have to use those high RON fuels exclusively, but like say 95 or even say 99% of all the engines out there, it's up to you. You can run 95, 97, RON100 even without any worries about about engine reliability. There are benefits to be had if you go up on the RON range. RON97, RON100, those premium fuels usually have added cleaning properties, added performance properties in terms of additives in the fuel, so you may get benefits there as well. And in Malaysia specifically, RON95 is still rated at Euro 2M, whereas RON97 and 100 are all up on RON Euro 4M. So of course, there are specific emissions properties there to be had too. The long story short, choose whatever fuel you want to use. The better the fuel is, you may get better benefits, but it's up to you to choose whether all that is worth it based on the higher price that you have to pay. But at no point will choosing the wrong fuel will break your engine. So yeah, in any case, next time when it comes to very specific technical automotive information, get it from a more, shall I say, proper source. Thank you for watching.